Now we got the basis of how to implement if statement and when to use the else statement. You see how helpful the if statement is, and then how else accompany the if statement accompanied with else statement, right? It's very helpful to actually make sure that Python runs, checks some conditions and runs particular command without wasting enough time, right? A lot of time. So what we want to do in this session is that we said there is more to the if else statement that we learned last time, right? Right now we are going to introduce ourselves to another keyword in the if statement, which will make it a full concept now, which is the elif, the elif statement. So the elif statement is allowing you to check conditions between the starting and the ending. We say the starting one is where we have the if, the condition, and something is run, right, under that condition. But then the else is the one that will be checked if the first one is not correct. What if we have more than three things, more than two things to check? What if before we get to the final else, there are some number of things that we want to check before getting to the else? Because else is always the last one that is checked. Else means that whatever you have checked so far, if all of them are wrong, then you move to the else, right? But then before you can check anything in between the if and then the else, right, we need to use the keyword elif. So let's see how that is run. So in this code example, we have something like we have first number equals 12 and second number equals 15. Now we need to know what are the possible conditions that we can change from these operations, right? If you have this number one, number two, right, there are basically three things that can happen. The numbers can be the same. That is the first one. Number one can be greater than number two, or the number two can be greater than number one. That will be like three conditions, right? Let me go over that again. We have two numbers here, first number and second number. The first number is 12 and the second number is 56, sorry. But there are three possible things that can happen. With these numbers. One, the first number can be greater than the second number. The second number can be greater than the first number, or the two numbers are the same, they are equal. That's what can happen for this particular thing. So if you want to do that, we need to make sure that we provide cases, right? We provide if statements such that can check all these three conditions and do a particular thing when these three conditions are not running, are true, right? So these are all the possible things. So there's no other way. So if the numbers are not the same, if one is not greater than the other, then something can happen. So we are going to run the if statement for all these three conditions. Now we have three conditions, right? So we have three conditions. And you have to keep in mind that if you have three conditions, right, the first one goes to the main, that's the starting one, that will be the if, the condition, then something will run under it. And then there is a last one. The last one will be the else. So we know that we have three possible things that we can check, right? Now among the three, there's a starting one and there's an ending one, which is the else and the if itself and the else. But between that, there's a third one that's in between that. In between that one, that will be what we have the elif to help us include any how do you call it, any intermediate condition that we need to have before getting to the statement, right? So yeah, we have if and else. If the first one doesn't run, then you go to the else. Else is always the last one that needs to run in an if condition. But then in the case where you have more than two conditions to check, right, we need to use elif to actually check the other ones, right? But then before you get to the elif, you know that when you have the conditions, the first one goes to the main one, which is the if, and one goes to the else. So now if you have three conditions, right, so meaning the if itself will take one, the else will take one, and the remaining ones will go to the elif. But keep in know that the if is the starting one, the ending one is the else, and in between the intermediates we have the elif. Let's run down all these things I'm trying to say, right? Let's use that with this example. For this example, we said there are three basic conditions. Number one can be greater than number two, or number two can be greater than number three, or the two numbers are the same. So now I'm going to say take the first condition, which is if first number is greater than second number, right? So we are starting with if. That's the first one. So if this particular condition is true, what should happen? We are going to just print first number is greater, right? So we are going to print that first. We are going to print first number, basically. Now the next condition will be else. Should be the last one. This should be the last one. Else, we are going to say print. Going to print a message saying that the two numbers are the same. Basically, this is what I'm having, right? I'm using the first one, the if statement itself, to check that the two conditions are the same, and then the first one to check that number one is greater than number two. But then there's a remaining one. This one is going to run when the two numbers are the same. This else is going to run when the two numbers are the same. But then what is going to happen if the second number is greater than first number, right? So I want to print that number when that thing happens, right? So what we are going to use the keyword Elif, second number is greater than first number, right? So I'm going to print second number in that case, right? So this is the meaning of this, right? So we are originally having to check if first number is this thing, right? Yeah, this is the one taking all the numbers. So like else that will run when the numbers are equal, right? But then we have used if already, and we have used else already. But the third condition should be an intermediate one, and the intermediate conditions we use the elif to include them, just like how we have it here. We have the elif, second number greater than the first number, and this will run, right? So a full if statement has the if, elifs, it can be more than that, and then else. We have if, elif, and else, right? The elifs can be more than one, but we have an if statement, elif, and else. This block of code, so if you have a structure like that, an if block like that, that is having if, elif, and all that together. If you're having a block of something bulk like this, right, this block of if statement is going to produce one answer. An if block is going to give you only one answer, and only one answer. Only one of them will run. So if you have an if statement, elif, and else, right, that's going to form a block, and then it's a block of checking. It's going to be checking some conditions, and the appropriate one that is correct, right, it will take that one and run that one as the correct one as a result of the entire if block statement. But then under this, if you start another if statement, but then for that if statement I want to use include another number. Let me include another number variable called third number. Let me call it number. Let me include it as 100, right? So I'm now starting another if statement. If third number is equal to second number, print third number. Basically, then I have else. I'm just going to print another message here. Third number is not greater. It's not equal to second number. So I want you to understand this, that what I have here, I have if, elif, and else. This is one block of if statement. When you start another if statement again, right, if you start another if statement again, this particular if statement is now independent. It doesn't depend on the previous one. So Python will check the first block of if statement and check the second block of if statement and produce one answer each time. Each time Python check an if statement, right, it's check all the conditions and produces the result, only one result from only one if statement. If you have a second one, if you have another if statement, start another if statement, then know that is going to be an independent of the previous one, and Python is going to take that if statement again and run it again and produce one result from it, independent of what has happened in the previous one. But then if you want an if statement that will check something and all of them, right, you need to put them in one block of if statement. How do you know that you have a full block of if statement? You have an if, you have elifs, and then you have an else. The else is the terminating one, the one that will check, that should come last. And then you have if, that's the starting one, if the statement. But then if you have intermediate conditions to check, you use the elifs. So how do you know the number of elifs that you need to use? You need to check all the possible number of conditions that a particular situation or a particular concept, right, and a particular code line you want to check in a particular line of code or for a particular problem. So you need to know the number of conditions you want to check. Once you know that, you have to do -2. Right? If you have to do -2, because if itself, the starting if itself will take 1, and the else will run the alternate one for all, aside all of them, and then the intermediate ones will now take care of the rest. That's how if statements also runs generally, right? That's what run. And then you also have to know that a block of if statement, that's if, elifs, and else, right? That's a block. That's the full block of an if statement. A block of if statement produce only one answer, so only one will come out. And if you start another if again, then you are making it independent of the previous one. Okay, enough of the long talk. Let's run this thing and see the result of what we are having here. So come to the terminal. I'm running this file. So we have 56, and then we have this number. A third number is not equal to second number. Now let's see how this one is doing. Well, we have something like first condition. We have how many numbers here? 1256, right? So the first result is the first answer here is coming from the first answer, which is 56, is coming from the first if statement, which is here. So this is the if statement, one block of if statement, as I said, right? When you go and if, elif, you go to else, that's one block. But here we have only one elif, right? If you go to the second one, we have if and else, right? If you had any intermediate one, then we are looking at an elif. Basically that. But then right now, we know that the first answer is coming from this one. But now how do we get 56? Meaning that 56 is the second number, meaning second number is printed. So meaning that only this condition was true, right? Second number is greater than the first number, so we printed the second number. 56 greater than 12. That makes sense. So that's why we printed that one. And when you come here, so nothing else. So one result among all these three, right? Only the result. So only the elif condition ran. So that block, only one answer we got. So that makes sense for us. And then when we come to this one, this is another if statement that needs to be checked again, right? And in this particular if block also brings one result as a result of that. So now we have is that this third number is not equal to 2. So because third number is not, so we are checking if third number is equal to second number, we are going to print that. Unfortunately, third number is 100 and second number is 56. So they are not equal, right? So this condition will now be false. Since it will be false, right, the Python will now pick the else, and the else is the one bringing the message for us, this message. That's what we are having in the terminal here, right? So again, that's the simplest thing, right? Simplest thing you should know about the if statement. So the if statements are, that's how they work. A block of if statement produce one answer, and then independent blocks, right, need to run, and then each block will produce only one answer, and they are independent of one another if there are many. And then if you have an if statement, how do you know a full structure of an if statement? You just have if, elif, then else. Sometimes based on your situation, right, you may just need an if, elif. People just don't use the else sometimes because of what you want. But then it's good that you understand that that's the full structure of an if statement, and each if block statement, right, should give you an answer. So you have if, elif, else relationship. That's what give you an answer at a time. That's what make a fulfill elif statement, if statement in Python. Yes. So I hope it has been helpful to understand what if statement really does generally. And then with these conditions, right, we are now moving to the next concept in Python. See you in the next session.